What's up guys, it's Eric from Rare Candy and welcome back to another Ultra Prism deck profile, and today we are looking at Dusk Necrozma Magnezone. So Ultra Prism, as you probably know, features a ton of metal support, and a lot of people are kind of hyping up this set and some of the cards in this deck for that reason, because Gardevoir has been so popular in the past. So we definitely wanted to build a deck around some of these new cards and try them out and see if they had any potential. So this is actually going to be the same list that we featured in our recent testing rounds video. So if you actually want to see this deck in action, I will have a link in the description for you guys to check that out. And if you're new to the channel and unfamiliar with those testing rounds videos that we post, they usually feature kind of our early, unrefined starting points to begin testing with. So there might be some things in this list that could be tweaked or maybe improved a little bit. So just something to keep in mind as we go through this deck profile. So let's get into it. This is a Magnezone deck, so we're playing 3 copies of Magnemite. And you might be thinking, well, wait, this is a metal deck, right? Why are we playing lightning type Magnemites? And well, the reason for that is it doesn't matter the type that it is. You can evolve from any type as long as the name of the card is the same. But the reason we are playing this one is because it has this ability, Sparkling Induction. As long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, it has 1 less retreat for every Magnemite on your bench. So what that means is if we open up with Magnemite and we play a Bridget and we get another Magnemite into play, we have free retreat, and we can retreat into something that's more preferable to start with. So that's why we're playing this one. There is a new Magnemite, I will say, from Ultra Prism that has a strong ability as well. It's a metal type, but in its ability prevents bench damage, which I think is also definitely a consideration. But right now, I just figured, you know what, this one seems kind of good. I like the idea of having free retreat, not having to waste my energy on this thing. So that's the one we're trying out. But like I said, I do think the one from Ultra Prism is worth considering too. Next up, we are playing, of course, the Metal Magneton. This is going to be the new one from Ultra Prism. We're just playing this one just because we can potentially attack with it if we have to, but nothing really too crazy to report on beyond that. And then kind of the star of the show, or well, I shouldn't say the complete star, but definitely the main source of energy acceleration in the deck is going to be 3 copies of this new Magnezone from Ultra Prism. So this one's actually very similar to the old Magnezone from Breakthrough. They let you accelerate as many energies as you would like, but this time it lets you accelerate as many metal energies as you would like. So with this guy and all these metal type attackers in the deck, we can, throw down a ton of energy and hit for large amounts of damage. So that's the main reason we're playing Magnezone. It does have an attack, 3 metal energy, and a colorless does 130, and then Magnezone can't attack on your next turn. So not the greatest move in the world, but you do have an potentially as an option there. And one thing I will point out that I do think is a bit of a bummer, Magnezone actually only has a 2 retreat cost. This is kind of a weird thing to say, but I do wish this card had a 3 retreat cost, because then we could run kind of like a heavy ball Skyla engine potentially, maybe similar to Tapu Bulu. But since this thing only has a 2 retreat cost, we have to build this a little bit differently. So I just wanted to make a quick little note of that. But our main attacker in the deck is going to be this new Dusk Necrozma GX, one of the big mascots from the Ultra Prism set. Both these cards in particular we did kind of talk about a little positively in our set review, so if you want to see that, definitely go check that out too. But Dusk Necrozma, 190 hit point, basic, so that's pretty good just in and of itself. Fire weak, resistant to Psychic, 3 retreat cost, all things that I think are kind of expected for this card. But let's take a look at its attacks. 60 damage for 3 colorless energy, pretty terrible. Its first attack is definitely not anything special at all. But the second attack is much more interesting. So for 3 metal and a colorless, you do 220 and discard 3 energy from this Pokemon. So ideally with this thing, you get down 4 energy with Magnezone, discard 3 energy, next turn you throw down 3 more, and you keep just blasting through each of your opponent's Pokemon with this attack. So definitely a very, very solid, hard-hitting attack. It does have a GX move. It's not, I think, our preferred GX move in the deck, but it's one that is still pretty good that you can potentially use. For 3 metal energy, it does 250, and then you can only use this attack if you are behind on prizes. So if your opponent is ahead and winning, you can use this, do 250, not have to discard any of your energy, and then follow up with its second attack to do 220 the next turn as well. So definitely some pretty good moves on this thing. We do have another Pokemon though. We are playing the Dialga GX. This is going to be our Pokemon whose GX move we want to abuse if possible. So let's just talk about that one real quick. For 3 metal and 2 colorless, you do 150. or of course 180 with the choice band, which is important to note to knock out things like Lele's and 180 hit point basic GXs and EXs. But 150 damage, and then you get another turn, which is crazy. You know, doing 250 with this guy is definitely good, but if possible, if you can take 2 prizes by using this attack and net yourself an extra turn, this GX move is absolutely insane. It enables some really interesting plays too. Like, just think of how many times you've ever had a game where you're like, man, I really want a Guzma, but I need to play N too, or vice versa. And Dialga actually enables plays like that to happen. You can maybe Guzma up something, take a knockout, and then get, you know, an opportunity to play N on your next turn as well. So just having an extra turn enables so many things to happen. You can potentially even do 180, knockout a Lele, and then retreat into Necrozma and take another knockout on the next turn. So this is definitely our preferred GX move, like I said, but I do think the one on Necrozma is also definitely solid as well. But Dialga does have a few other things going for him. It does have its first attack for a single metal energy, draw until you have 6 cards in your hand. So Dialga is definitely a Pokemon you want to see more in the late game, but if you do have to start with it, it does have kind of an awkward retreat cost, which can make it a pain to get out of the active spot. So while it's stuck there, you actually do have a solid move you can abuse while you're setting up still. And the last attack that it has is just for a metal and 2 colorless, does 80 damage, and it goes through any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. So that means you go through things like Jolteon EX's Flash Ray, you go through things like Luminous Barrier on the Alolan Ninetales. So this attack does have some utility, but like I said, the main reason we are looking at this card is going to be for its GX move. And a couple of important things to also note, this card is Dragon type, so that means it's going to be weak to Fairy, which means Gardevoir can kind of easily run through this thing. So you'll definitely have to be careful about how you play this down against Gardevoir, if at all, but something just to make note of. But it actually can be good too, gives you some better type coverage against things like Volcanion, since it isn't weak to fire. So just want to point out its typing real quick as well. Another new card we have from Ultra Prism is going to be the new Ultra Prism Star. It's one of these new Prism Star cards. Whenever they get discarded, they go to the Lost Zone instead. So that means you can't get them back once they have been knocked out, or you have to discard them for some reason. So the reason we're running this guy is for its first attack for just a single metal energy. You get to search your discard for an energy for every Pokemon your opponent has in play and attach them to your Pokemon any way that you like. So if your opponent has 6 Pokemon in play, guess what? You get to search your discard pile for 6 energy and power up your board. So this is actually kind of nice in certain situations where maybe your only Magnezone got knocked out and you can't get another one set up right away. You can kind of pivot into this Ultra Prism Star and then get your board set up that way while you're developing another Magnezone. So kind of a cool card for that reason. It does have an attack to do 160 for 4 metal energy, and I believe it can't use that attack on the next turn, or it can't attack the next turn. Something to that effect, guys. I do apologize. These are just Japanese proxies, so I don't have the attack remembered exactly at this moment. But like I said, the main reason we're even playing it is for its first attack, though. So that Ultra Prism Star. We're also playing 1 copy of Oranguru. For that Instruct ability. So once during your turn before you attack, you may draw until you have 3 cards in your hand. And the reason that is good is because this deck is incredibly reliant on attaching energy from your hand every turn, since Necrozma is going to discard your energy almost every time you attack. So it's important in the late game, if you get end, having a way to potentially draw out of that and you know, keep your deck running and not whiffing a turn of attacking. Also does have a kind of half decent attack psychic, 60 plus 20 for every energy on your opponent's active. So it's kind of a decent little attack if you do have to use it, but the main reason, of course, like I said, is going to be for that Instruct ability. And then to round out the Pokemon line, just 2 copies of Tapu Lele GX for that Wonder Tag ability, search supporters out of our deck. But also, I think Tapu Lele is actually a great support Pokemon in this deck as well. So Energy Drive, 20 for every energy on both active Pokemon. Well, that's pretty nice in a deck that lets you attach as many energies as you want. So, I mean, that does require you to attach a ton of energy to Lele to take 1-hit knockouts on some of the GXs in the current format, but you do have the option, and it's nice because it doesn't require you to actually discard your energy, unlike your Dusk main Necrozma. So, a decent little backup attacker as well. So, moving on to our trainer cards, we're playing 3 Cynthia, the new supporter from Ultra Prism. Shuffle your hand into your deck, draw 6, pretty straightforward. Great little early game supporter. You know, this deck does have a lot of rare candies and evolutions floating around in it, so sometimes Professor Sycamore isn't the best, And also we have to play a ton of metal energy in here. So especially in the early game, before you get Magnezone set up, you don't really want to discard maybe like a handful of like 3 or 4 energy if possible. So Cynthia, great in the early game, helps you preserve resources whenever you don't want to Sycamore. So next up we are playing 3 copies of N. Just another shuffle draw supporter, and in the late game it will punish your opponent. So if they are very far ahead in the game, you can lower them down to a low hand size, since both players shuffle and draw equal to their prize cards. So just a common supporter we've had in the format forever now. And then to round out the draw supporters, just 2 copies of Professor Sycamore. Discard your hand, draw 7. Still one of the best supporters in the game. So next up we have 3 copies of Guzma, of course just to choose what we want to take knockouts on. And 2 copies of Bridget, just to search your deck for basics early on in the game while we're getting set up. And 1 copy of Fisherman. It's going to round out the supporters. So put 4 energy from your discard into your hand. Basic energy, I should specify. So after we've discarded a bunch of energy with Duskmane Necrozma, we can maybe play Fisherman at some point, get it all back to our hand, and throw it all back down with Magnezone if possible. So next up we have 4 copies of Ultra Ball, of course just to search out Pokemon out of our deck. We have 4 copies of Rare Candy. So even though we are playing only 3 Magnezone, we are maxing out Rare Candy just to increase our chances of getting the turn 2 Magnezone if at all possible. Next up, we have another new card from Ultra Prism. We have 3 copies of Mount Coronet. It's a new stadium card. So once during a player's turn, they may put 2 metal energy from their discard pile back into their hand. So you can see the synergy here. Discard your energy with Duskmane Necrozma, get it back with Mount Coronet, and throw it back down with Magnezone. And this is actually really nice because in the past we've had things like energy retrieval, and sometimes, you know, if you have energy retrieval in your hand but you have Sycamore, you'll have to discard it and you won't get any use out of it. So Mount Coronet's nice because if you do have a supporter you want to play, and even though you can't make use of Mount Coronet right now, you can just put it in play and then play your Sycamore while keeping your Mount Coronet around to potentially use at some point. So it's like a more permanent version of energy retrieval, assuming your opponent does not field blower it or play their own stadium to counter it. So I think this is definitely a bit of an upgrade to energy retrieval for this type of deck. So next up, we're playing 3 copies of Choice Band, of course, just to increase our damage output. Like I said, important for Dialga GX to be able to hit for over 170, just to knock out things like Tapu Lele. I think that's going to be a very important number to hit for. Being able to hit for 180 is pretty good too, just because that knocks out basically most basic GXs and EXs. So, like I said, it's mainly going to be for Dialga. There are certain Pokemon that Necrozma can't knock out as well, so there are situations where you might want to hit for 250 to knock out something like a Metagross GX, just as an example. But like I said, I think it's probably more important that we use this for Dialga. And actually, I've been thinking about actually changing 1 Choice Band to a copy of Acerola. I think that's another card that could have synergy with this Magnezone deck. So I'm not sure if you need all 3 Choice Bands. That is one of the next changes I want to kind of test out for this deck. So just something that came to mind. Figured I'd mention it in this deck profile. Then we have 2 copies of Floatstone, just to give our Pokemon free retreat. So if you notice, everything in this deck has a very, very awkward retreat cost. Magnezone has 2, Necrozma has 3, Dialga has 3, Solgaleo Prism Star has 3, Oranguru has 2. So you can see how it would be very inconvenient if we had one of these Pokemon stuck in the active spot, not needing to attack. So of course we're playing Floatstone just to have some free retreat there. Next up, 2 copies of Field Blower, of course, to discard our opponent's tool cards and stadiums. So getting things like Choice Bands to make sure our opponent can't knock us out in one hit is going to be very important. You know, if they have maybe a stadium of their own, we might want to get rid of that as well. If we go against any Garbodor decks, even though they have been kind of, I think, declining in popularity lately, Field Blower, of course, can get rid of the tool cards attached to the Garbotox and Garbodor that would typically shut off our Magnezone. So Field Blower, just kind of a staple that's been in the game for a while now. And 1 Super Rod just to round out the trainer cards. So shuffle any combination of 3 Pokemon or basic energy back into your deck. And we're playing this over Rescue Stretcher just because, you know, Necrozma goes through a ton of energy. Yes, we do play Mount Coronet, we play Fisherman, but I'm playing the Super Rod just to ensure that we do actually keep having access to energy throughout the course of the game. You know, even while playing this deck, I've come close to running out of energy at times. So Super Rod just kind of helps with that and to help ensure that does not happen. I do think Rescue Stretcher is fair if you do want to play that too. Like I said, I was just a little paranoid that I'm going to run out of energy, so that's why I'm playing Super Rod right now. But I do think there is a case to be made for Rescue Stretcher too if you were passionate about running that instead. And then to round out the list, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 metal energy. Kind of a thick count just to ensure that we can always draw them when we need them. So between that, Super Rod, Mount Coronet, and Fisherman, we should have plenty of ways to keep recycling them throughout the course of a game. But yeah, guys, that is going to be our first attempt at a Dusk main Necrozma deck. One thing I will point out too is over on our Patreon at patreon.com/rarecandytcg, our Stage 2 patrons actually have access to an additional Dusk main Necrozma GX deck that is built a lot differently than that one. So if you want to see this alternate take on the deck, I will have a link in the description if you want to learn about how to access that and support our channel. But definitely seems to be a powerful card. Also, Dialga GX has an insane GX move. So I definitely expect these cards to pop up in some capacity, whether it's with Magnezone or other partners, I'm not sure yet, but the cards definitely seem like they have some potential here. But as usual, guys, feel free to like and subscribe. Definitely stay tuned to the channel too. We're going to have a ton of Ultra Prism coverage coming up. And if you can support our channel, like I mentioned earlier, by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/rarecandytcg, or by picking up something from our online store at rarecandytcg.com, it would be greatly appreciated. But with that, I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you for the next one.